And I think it's interesting because I always I always think of it as like work delivery channels. You've got your permanent workforce, you've got the ability to bring in contractors and temp labour, which typically is, your time and materials, time and expenses. And then you've got the ability to do the variety of different outsourcing models where you are buying a service or an output or an outcome from a company that is providing that service. T&M as a go-to, as a get you started, dealing with a simple situation is the simplest way to do it. You're just measuring time. The other side to that is you don't know how much time it's going to take. So it comes on to I always think it's horses for courses, in the sense that in the right context of what it is you want to achieve. So like you were saying, if it's something really simple, is it really an area where there's a massive opportunity for innovation? It's a very simple, straightforward task. I think, as you said in the white paper, if I remember correctly, where the level of skill and knowledge within the buying organisation is similar to what they're buying in from a service provider, then you're really just buying extra capacity. So it makes sense in the right circumstances. It's not a question of this contracting model is always better than that contracting model. There's a time and a place for the particular modes of contracting. But as a default, I do feel like it's easy for companies to just adopt a time and materials mindset, because they feel comfortable. There's work being done. There's people doing it. And I know how much I'm paying per hour or per day, and I'm comfortable with that because they're not having to do the bigger thinking about how much is this going to cost in terms of total cost of ownership? What's the lifetime of this going to be versus what is it I want to achieve, and what's the actual outcome or outputs I'm after, which is a much bigger thought exercise at the beginning of the process. So effectively what you're saying makes sense in that there's no point in going through that big exercise and investing all of that if it's something very straightforward and the most effective way to do it is via time and materials. So there's always going to be absolutely a place for T&M.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why the title of the paper was How Time and Materials Contracts Hamper Innovation. Because if you don't need innovation in a given category or a given service line, time and materials is fine. It's only in areas where you really need innovation, and that innovation you're getting from the supplier is going to move the needle, that it's worth investing in complex relational outsourcing agreements. So, one example, let's say, right? So Transport for London, before the 2012 Olympics, they wanted to, they were going to have visitors coming from all around the world. It's just, massive showcase of London's, presence as a global city. And they wanted to make sure that the transportation network, the underground, the overground, everything that comes under the TfL umbrella was working to, was a symbol of London's kind of efficiency and modernity and whatever you like. So they brought in cubic transportation systems, which they manage, among other things, the turnstiles that you go through when you're in the underground, and they invested heavily in a true collaborative co-designed agreement, which had, I think that I was listening to a podcast with this case the other day. There was 95 odd different SLAs that they had to comply with, and so you've got an agreement there, which is it's of such high value to TfL as the client that to have uptime on as many different turnstiles and all the rest of the assets that are under management as possible during this time period, that it's worth getting a senior team of people together to collaborate and come up with a complex document that's going to be managed to a T. You're going to have a governance structure that involves both parties. It's going to be you're going to be overseeing that, and even to the extent that it was designed so that the team at Cubic Transportation Systems would have to sort of prioritize which SLAs they were going to meet at each time to give the greatest payoff to them and TfL, because they couldn't meet both of them at the same time.
But that was down to them to prioritize that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the contract's designed so that they have trust in the partner there to make the right decision at the right time. So that's I think a beautiful example of, you've got high risk, really high amount of value in delivering that contract, bright. It's going to have a massive payoff, not just for TfL, but for the whole country. It's a huge once in a lifetime event. And so that's something which rewards investing in the contract and driving innovation off the back of it. But that's obviously on the far end of that spectrum. Yeah, but it could be 80% of the things we come in contact with. The Pareto rule, 80% probably is a minority of what we're actually spending on, and a minority of risk. And so in those cases, it's much simpler to draw up a contract which is based on inputs rather than outputs or even outcomes. And so, in many cases, the time and materials contract is perfectly sufficient for the needs that you have.